Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I was lucky enough to chat with playwright, director, and producer Stan Zimmerman. Stan has been nominated for 2 WGA Awards for his work on both The Golden Girls and Roseanne. He also wrote and produced on Gilmore Girls and co-created the Lifetime sitcom Rita Rocks. He also wrote both Brady Bunch movies. We talk about some of that, but also his upcoming streamed reading of the play he co-wrote with Christian McLaughlin, a Christmas comedy called Yes, Virginia. It's a heartwarming, hilarious holiday comedy in the vein of his writing for Golden Girls, centering on two older women navigating the perils of aging in suburban Detroit. The streamed reading for Yes, Virginia will happen December 17th through 20th, and you can get tickets now at stellartickets.com. It's a fun interview, and I hope you enjoy.
Hey Les, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for spotlighting all this.
Yeah.
Great.
Been really looking forward to it. Ironically, over Thanksgiving, I ended up watching an absolutely outstanding amount of Roseanne.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, well, it's a show that my girlfriend and I both adore, grew up on, and think is great. And it also, for me as a TV nerd, has always been this kind of study in. The more I know about Roseanne Arnold, now Barr again,
Oh, yes.
the less I would think, if I were writing a role for this person as a comic, I would definitely not write her as the every woman put upon mother of that everybody relates to. I feel like she is in real life very disconnected from what I think of as normal.
Well, now
suburban.
she is, but
Yeah.
when you think of the beginnings and, when she first started, and that's a whole story. Were you watching the new shows, or are you watching
Oh,
regular?
no. We were throwing back. Oddly, actually watched your WGA nominated episode as
Oh,
well.
cool.
Yeah,
Wow.
Don't Ask, Don't
Just
Tell
by
episode.
chance, or you
By
purposely
absolute chance. I was
Okay.
going back through my research and went, oh,
went? Oh,
wow.
God.
Yeah,
So
of
weird.
the 8 million seasons of that or whatever. We landed on yours perfectly.
We actually turned down Roseanne in the beginning. I had seen her on The Tonight Show when she was just a stand-up comic, I think on her very first appearance. And the next day I called our agent. I said, who is that woman? I've never seen anybody talk like that or look like that on TV. And his attitude was, America's not going to want to watch a fat woman. And I was like, are you crazy? She's so unique. And I had, not really since the time of like Norman Lear's shows had you seen someone talking about struggling and finding change in, underneath the cushions on your couch and sitting on the floor. And I love that. And I love just her storytelling. So I was thrilled when we got to go on the show, once it had kind of gone through its early difficult gestation problems. That's putting it nicely.
Yeah, I had honestly, rewatching it now, I had forgotten how far they went on. I mean, they go into episode without power. These things, and these are real at this point. I've been through that. I've watched out a window to hope my car didn't get towed. Like these things happen, and it's wild to see them on TV. And you're right, it does speak back to that feeling of All in the Family or some Norman Lear television of a little realer. And it prompted a discussion with friends about the falseness of those shows, the laugh track sometimes, or even the studio audience for real, and how abstracted and silly multicam sitcoms can feel sometimes, and yet how easily they punch to the heart of real family dynamic.
Especially with a show like that, and we had, done the driver's seat where she hits DJ and she sits there for like a minute of airtime without really saying anything. And when you watch that episode and then compare it to season one, when she was almost laughing because she was just having a good time and didn't know really that much about acting, but was smart enough to wait to shoot the pilot until Laurie Metcalf and John Goodman became available. And then interestingly, I had gone in 2015 to Moscow to help them develop a Russian Roseanne show. And they didn't quite understand why the show wasn't funnier. And I had to explain that was part of what made it so special, is that you would be laughing hysterically 1 minute and then you'd be crying. And, it was really closer to real life in that combining all those beautiful elements. So in such a smart, intelligent way.
Yeah.
And very relatable at the same time.
When you're going into a project like that, can you talk a little bit about the pressure that you and James Berg might have felt trying to sit down and write these things? Was there a huge amount of pressure to tell Sandra Bernhardt's character story correctly, or to get these things right? Did it?
By the time we went on, when we first were offered it, there was just a script. There was no anything, so we didn't know what it was. And we heard there was just a lot of turmoil going on. By the time we got to it, there was even more turmoil, but we kind of knew what the show was, and it was the exact kind of show we wanted to write. We did not know at the time that there would be 21 writers on staff. Usually there's maybe 10 or 11 at the most, and that's part of the famous story. The very first day when we were on set, Tom Arnold and Roseanne thought it would be funny if they had numbered T-shirts. That way they wouldn't have to remember your name, and if you had to get fired, she would just point to, and say, number 8, you're gone. And I didn't quite get the joke at the time. I was just like, oh, my birthday's the 13th. I want number 13 T-shirt, which I still have, and I've maybe worn 3 times. But the other writers were all grumbling, like, that's so rude to do. But it was very intimidating because stand-up comics are so funny. It was like Norm Macdonald and Laura Keitlinger and just really smart people, but they weren't writers yet. They were just funny people. And so they had a learning curve about, jokes have to come from character, especially on a show like that. But it was intimidating to be in a room because they would just spout these things just instantly out of their mouths, where I felt Jim and I we crafted jokes in our office. And so you do kind of get a little quiet or shy, and we would break up into multiple rooms because there were just so many people. And there were some rooms that, I felt more comfortable talking, and others I didn't. It was a very interesting job.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to get your idea heard in a room where there's 2 different styles of communication, where you've
loud and mostly guys and mostly white guys, and then Amy Sherman, who is not Amy Sherman Palladino at the time. I remember her coming into a room after we had broken a Darlene story or something, and she sits down and she probably had fishnets and a hat or something. And she just said, no, Darlene wouldn't do this, and this is why. And she just broke it all apart. And all the writers were really mad. And Jim and I were like, who is this brilliant woman? And I remember talking to her during a break, and I was like, oh, my God, you're so right. And she just knew Darlene and how to construct a show. And that's when we became really good friends, and then ended up going on to Gilmore Girls years later for her.
When it comes to knowing a character or knowing a character's voice like that, Roseanne, nobody on Roseanne sounds anything like anyone on Gilmore Girls. But Gilmore Girls has such a particular sound to it. As a writer moving across different shows, has that been something you've fallen into easily in your career, being able to take a deep breath and get that new voice and write for that script? Or has that been something you've really had to grind on?
It's a talent, really, to be able to step into a show that somebody else created and they have their own language and be able to write under that. And some people, can do that well, and other people have to write their own voices. Because my background is in acting, and luckily when I started at a very young age of 7.5 at Cranbrook Theater School in Michigan, and I had a very smart teacher who said, just go to the mall and watch and listen to people. And for a young kid to learn that, it wasn't about me, it was about hearing other people's voices and how they talked, and I've always been very quizzical. And that has helped me and Jim write. We will still go, well, not during COVID, but pre-COVID, we would go to a mall and watch people and kind of make up what we think they were saying as we'd watch them from afar. We would take different parts. So we loved doing that and hearing it. Even one of our first specs was Cheers. And, how, when someone comes in, they go, hey, or hi, or, just having that ear to each specific show and how they write and how they sound.
When it comes to writing with a partner, I was just at Austin Film Fest, and there was an entire panel on writing with a partner. And I remember afterwards in the chat, a bunch of people going, "Oh, I don't think I could ever do that. That seems like it'd be terrible." But you have successfully written with not just Jim, but Yes, Virginia, that you have coming up.
Yes, with Christian McLaughlin, who worked on Married with Children and Desperate Housewives. I loved it because I never thought of myself as a writer. I was an actor and observer, and I had great ideas, but I didn't read as a kid, so I didn't think I could be a writer, whereas Jim studied journalism at NYU, and that's where we met. So we came to it with different specialties, and over the years, I got to be a good writer, and then he got to understand a little bit more as far as characters having motivation, from an actor's point of view. And, Christian is completely different because he's very hysterical and comes at it much more from the joke perspective. But I've always loved writing with somebody else, and especially with comedy, it's great because I'll get so much into the characters, I'll suddenly, turn into B. Arthur, which is kind of comical to watch. Although I'm more of a Sophia in my mind. But when you're with a partner, I'll just spout something, and then if he laughs, I'm like, what did I say? What's so funny? And so for comedy, I find it very beneficial. I don't think I could ever do it alone, and I never did. And it wasn't until I did a reality show on Bravo that Sean Hayes produced called Situation Comedy, where I had to be on my own. And then suddenly it was like, oh, this is really scary. How do I do that? And so then I started directing alone, and I kind of got my courage up, and then the first play I wrote alone, which we just did with Vanessa Williams and Blair Underwood, was using real suicide notes because a very close friend of mine died by suicide. And I created a play using real notes and facts and didn't think I would be writing anything. And then my director urged me to put my own story in it, and suddenly I'm writing now and writing by myself. And so it was a gradual process of trusting my own voice and trusting myself and just doing it. And it was scary, but now I feel much more comfortable writing alone, although I still love working and collaborating with somebody else and still work with Jim today.
I know anytime I'm in between projects, and I even had an art professor in college talk about how he would never let himself get done with a sculpture without some other thing kind of going a little bit. It can be difficult to push through that inertia in between projects sometimes. After writing something like Right Before I Go, was it particularly difficult, or how did you sit back down and get on to the next project? What felt appropriate?
I'm a workaholic, so I'm always juggling 5 or 6 projects. And something like Right Before I Go, I'm actually acting now in playing myself, the narrator. And so in one respect, it's very emotionally difficult to do, but it's also very cathartic, and it's helping me just process what happened with my friend, and also just how wonderful it feels to create discussion with my work. And over the years, I've been wanting to do more with combining art and advocacy. Even with something like Yes, Virginia, there are elements that are based on my mother, my housekeeper, and dealing with getting older and dementia, but in the way of a Golden Girls script where it's really, really funny, but it's also very, very heartfelt and real. So I like that combination. And I like challenging people and provoking discussion. But something with Yes, Virginia, you are laughing really hard at the situation, which I think is a great way to have knowledge come in at the same time, so it's not hitting you over the head. That's never been my style.
Yeah, I think something that I've always taken for granted with sci-fi genre particularly is space or spaceships can be a little bit of sugar to make the medicine go down on a little bit heavier handed morality tale sometimes. And I feel like comedy, I often neglect, does the same thing. I can be laughing along with Roseanne or Golden Girls or any number of Christmas movies, and have it kind of sneak in like, oh yeah, that's why I like my family.
And you can put up with them. And Golden Girls did that a lot. At the time, when Facts of Life would do very special episodes, they just did regular episodes where they dealt with, lesbianism or Lebanese or many topics, even suicide, but in a very, 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 very funny way. And, we always talk about in writing is we cut the treacle. Like, you don't want to ever be so heavy-handed. You cut it with the joke. And I've kind of just been that way in my real life, always looking at the cup half full, or my father used to say I looked at life through rose-colored glasses. And so I do find the humor, and I find the humor just gets me through a lot, and especially this year. And, I think that's why something like Golden Girls has been so popular on Hulu, one of their biggest shows. And I think that's why I think doing this show, Yes, Virginia, will be even more touching during this time, because it is talking about family and families that you create that are necessarily, blood families and relationships that are so important, and dealing with it through humor.
And Yes, Virginia is a streaming reading, which one of the only silver linings to anything this year, I think, has been the number of quote unquote live events that I've not. I mean, obviously we've all lost a lot of live events, but I've gotten to see some table reads and crazy stuff that I've just not seen before. And can you talk a little bit about, as a writer, do you prefer stage to televised stuff? Is it just a matter of size of audience? Is streaming?
I've been moving more into stage, and just there's nothing better than being in a live theater and hearing people laugh at stuff that you've written. And I compare it to, being on like the Golden Girls set or Roseanne, and that's so immediate. But there's something about theater today that I really love, having that shared experience. So it was very sad, and I was in New York in March when COVID really hit, and I had projects that were going to be in Connecticut and Detroit and Florida and Burbank and all sorts of places that have all been canceled or postponed. But I found a way through COVID to have readings of my plays to keep them moving. Like I did a big reading of a project called Silver Foxes with George Takei. And so it was a way for us we turned it into a play. It was originally a TV pilot. So it was a way to advance the project and get people from all over, like Daniel Davis from The Nanny, who's in New York, could be in the production with George Takei, who's in California, and I'm here. So I found a lot of actors, because there's less work and people are hungry to do something creative, will jump in and do these readings. You don't have to memorize the lines. The script is right on your computer, and it's not that long of a rehearsal process. So I've gotten amazing people. I did a reading of I played Meet and Greet with Melissa Peterman for Coachella Valley Rep in the desert out here.
And that one's also with Christian, isn't it?
Yes, that was. So I've been actually most of the plays that I've written, we've been able to do it. I did one with Wendy Malick called Knife to the Heart, which we did with Play Preview, which is a great company that started because of COVID, where they do live readings, but it's all to raise money for certain causes. And it's really fun. It's intense to do it on Zoom. And, as I tell my actors when I'm directing these plays, think of it like Saturday Night Live. If you make a mistake, you go with it and you laugh about it. And I found that the audiences love it because you're literally in the living rooms or sometimes bedrooms of all these famous people that you've seen on TV. And it's very intimate and personal. And so it's been a real joy to bring theater, and not just something heavy like Right Before I Go, but something like Yes, Virginia or Knife to the Heart, which are big comedies, because people really need to laugh. And I feel like as we come out of this COVID and hopefully this vaccine will work, people are going to want to come together and laugh. And I hope to be able to provide that for people.
I have to think you're right. I feel like there's going to be a rush back to just how many concerts can we go see? How many shows?
And something, like, hopefully next Christmas we can do Yes, Virginia Live, but, I'm really ready to present Silver Foxes in a live theater and have that communal experience. It's really special, and it's been, extremely missed.
I'm kind of a sucker for lost pilots and shows that
I have a few.
Yeah, and Silver Foxes has it's a bit legendary. I feel like that's just, it's such a great idea. As soon as you hear about the idea, you're like, I'd watch that show. Everything about it's just more and more, and then the punchline of no, that doesn't exist.
There's still, people are still afraid. We had one major streaming company say it wasn't a broad enough audience. This is recently, and I'm like, but Golden Girls, and they don't care. It's it's got two strikes in their minds. It's gay and it's older people.
Yeah.
And ageism is still a problem, and it's still okay to make fun of old people in a derogatory way. I've seen it on recent network TV shows, and I want to shed light on it in a very inclusive way.
Yeah, where's the Mike and Molly for the older set now?
Exactly, but until someone breaks out and does it, and that's why I didn't let it stop me. If TV's not ready for it yet, I'll put it on stage. And Lucy did the same thing. She took I Love Lucy around the country as a live stage show, and finally people had to say, well, people are liking it, let's put it on TV. So
nobody's going to want Roseanne. Who wants to watch a fat woman? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you keep finding different ways to, and same thing when you get hit with the COVID. And how are you going to present something, do a reading of it, live or recorded?
Mm-hmm. So you've got Yes, Virginia is December 17th through 20th. Is that?
Yes. So it's only 4 nights, and it's stellartickets.com. And the amazing Arnisha Walker, who is the only woman that's ever played all 3 roles of Dreamgirls, Broadway, LA touring. And then the wonderful Mindy Sterling, who I've worked with a lot. She was in Austin Powers, and she's currently on the Goldbergs. And I got her first Emmy nomination for a web series I did called Sex and Execs. So we have a long history together, and if I don't cast her in something, she will complain even if the roles are all for 20-year-olds. She still wants to be in it.
I could do it. You just got to believe in me. Come on.
Yes, I can play it. Well, I did do my second production. I did put her in a Tuna Christmas. I don't know if you know the Tuna
Oh, yeah. No, I live in Austin, man. I know a Tuna Christmas.
So you know them.
Yeah.
So they're usually done by 2 men playing 20 different men and women. I had her and Patrick Bristow play that, so you didn't know who was coming in as a woman or man, and it was very successful out here. And, she's with the Groundlings improv company, so she's great with characters. So she can play almost anything, and we have such a great rapport now, and we kind of just bicker like family. So, but we love each other, and I can't wait for everybody to see how wonderful she is and Arnisha in this production.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a blast. Everybody should go grab tickets, and can't wait. Thank you so much for making time.
For the whole family. Well, thank you, and I know we have so much more to talk about Roseanne and Gilmore and all that, so hopefully we will continue this.
And your TV theme song music, there's so... I could have derailed my questions. I did.
That is, it's called It's On, and we will be doing it, and with Cheryl Lee Ralph, and Marissa Jerry Winokur from Hairspray wants to direct it, so I hope to have some big news about that soon.
Yes, and we'll have to talk again about it. Thank you so much. TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.